In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why software engineering backgrounds are the perfect fit to become a data engineer, and they're worth 100,000 more in the data engineering field. And I'm going to show you exactly how to benefit from that in today's market and the 90-day move or the 90-day plan that you can implement in order to go from a software engineer to a data engineer and command a much higher salary. Because if you're a software engineer, you're likely leaving a lot of money on the table by not making this transition. And all it takes is leveraging the skills that you already have, adding the missing 10, 20% in skill gaps that you have, and then boom, transitioning up and over into a higher paying data role. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Garzone. I'm the founder and CEO of Data Engineer Academy, the largest data engineering school in the country. I myself went from making 50 grand a year at Amazon to almost 500 grand a year at Lyft in less than 6 months time. And now we've gone on to help thousands of other tech professionals just like you convert into a higher paying data role. And here's what I see every single time. Software engineers don't just go into a data engineering role, they actually dominate it. And so if you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm a software engineer, I don't really know much about data, I don't want to start all over, stay with me because it's the entirely wrong mindset to have. And if you listen to the end of this video, you will actually see that you're in a position to benefit like no one else. So I'll break down exactly what skills transfer over, what you need to learn, and how you can position into a role that's going to pay you $50, $100, $200,000 more than what you're currently making. Let's get into it. Point number one, you already have all the skills necessary to do this. You've already done the hard part, because if you think about it, all the skills as a software engineer, production debugging, system thinking, building at scale, all of that transfers over very nicely to the data engineering side. So think about what actually transfers. On the software engineering side, we have distributed systems, version control, testable code, CI/CD, containerization, debugging production issues under pressure. That's on the software engineering side. But then on the data engineering side, the equivalent of that is pipeline design, reliability, infrastructure, right? The same things apply to data movement instead of web services, but the concepts are the same. We're just talking about data instead of web. And so every single one of the skills that a software engineer knows, the ones I just listed, they're actually harder to teach than SQL. So you as a software engineer might say, hey, I don't know any data engineering skills, but the thing is, like, you can learn SQL, SQL in less than a month, given your software engineering background. And we see all the time data analysts convert into a data engineer without all that knowledge of a software engineer that you might already have. And so if you're thinking to yourself, there's no way I can make a transition from software engineer to data engineer, just remember, data analysts are doing this move all the time. And I'll tell you a story. I had a student, he had a background in fintech. He had been building REST APIs. He had been working with things like Kubernetes, PostgreSQL, and he was making about 160 grand. I think he had about somewhere between 5 and 10 years experience. So not bad money, but he knows he could have been doing above 200 grand at this point. And he came to us and he was convinced that he needed to do a complete career restart. And so he was hesitant to start because of the fact that he would, quote unquote, have to take a pay cut. But it just wasn't true. And so we went through his resume, and every single time we saw, hey, this is an API that you had built out, we just said, hey, you can actually talk about the fact that this API that process user events is a data ingestion pipeline, right? So we took his software engineering skill and mapped it to a data engineering skill, right? Every database optimization he had done was an analytics query performance work, right? Every containerization service running on a schedule was a batch pipeline, right? So everything on the left side, software engineering, transferred over to the right side, data engineering. He hadn't been doing just software engineering work. He had been doing data engineering work, but just without the same vocabulary. So we just had to change the stuff that he was already doing so he can make the argument or illustrate the story during the interviews that he can do the work of a data engineer. And so the big lesson here is, if you want to apply the same tactic, pull up your resume for every technical skill listed on there, see if it has a data engineering equivalent, right? And so your systems architecture would be the same as a data platform design, for example. Your API development is the same as data ingestion. Your database optimization is the same as analytical query performance, right? And see if you can create a data engineering like resume using all the software engineering stuff you've already done, and see if you can just paint a better story, because that's how you can leverage all the experience that you already have. And trust me, you have a lot more than you think. Point number 2, companies actually prefer to have software engineers as data engineers. And so data engineering managers don't just accept software engineering backgrounds, they actually recruit for them. They would prefer it over, let's say, a data analyst or a business analyst background, because the skills that make somebody an excellent software engineer, they're the exact skills that are the hardest to find in a really, really good data engineer. And the data engineering pool, like I mentioned, a lot of people come from a data analyst, business analyst background. But if you come from a software engineering background, you're already way ahead of the game. And so if you think about all the people coming from a analytics or a BI background, these are typically the people that have a lot of SQL experience. They have a lot of dashboarding experience. They have a lot of Excel experience, and that's fine. Those systems just aren't scalable. They haven't thought about how to handle errors at scale. They've never made a system idempotent, right? And so they've never had to think about what happens when a pipeline starts to process millions or billions of rows, gigabytes and terabytes of rows. What happens when we fail with 60,000 data points, right? And whether it could be recovered without duplicating data. All of those things a data analyst might have never had to handle. But a software engineer, you guys are thinking about this stuff automatically, almost on a daily basis. So that's not a gap that you have. That's actually years of hard work that you've put in that is actually very much a competitive advantage. But there's something else. Software engineers already know how to communicate all these technical things to business teams, right? So whereas a data analyst might be good at communication, now they have to learn the technical things and then communicate those technical things over to non-technical folks. But as a software engineer, you've probably already been doing both. And the ability to translate between technical and business value is what separates junior data engineers making 150 grand from senior folks making 250, 350, 450. And I'll tell you a story here that illustrates everything on an interview side. When I post a data engineering role, I will get resumes from folks on the data analyst side and folks on the software engineering side. And the software engineering folks stand out by far, but it's not because of the tools. Everybody thinks it's because of the tools or the certificates. It's not because of that. What it actually is, it's the questions that software engineers ask, the way they word things on the resume or the questions they ask on the actual interview. They tend to ask better questions because they tend to have better context, right? They ask about error handling, they ask about monitoring, about alerting, about who is, responsible when things go wrong at 2 a.m., right? Who is on call? CI/CD pipelines, right? Putting things on repo and having good documentation. These are all things that engineers already do, and those best practices transfer over very nicely to a data engineering side. And these are things that a data analyst, for example, might not have. And so when you go to your next interview, if you're a software engineer, lead with those engineering instincts. Use it as an advantage. Ask about how they handle pipeline failures. Ask about how they handle data quality checks, how they put systems in place to alert and monitor when something goes wrong, right? Because those questions actually signal that you're already thinking like a data engineer because you already have been doing it as a software engineer. And this is your competitive advantage versus everybody in IT or everybody as a data analyst or everybody not in tech, right? And so use that as a huge competitive advantage as a software engineer. By the way, I put together a free SQL training. It's in the description. It's specifically for engineers, software engineers that know a lot of object-oriented programming languages, Python, C#, C++, all this stuff. But you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I need to now learn the basics. I need to learn SQL. So we've put that in the description. It covers all the analytical stuff, right? So window functions, CTEs, all the advanced stuff, dimensional modeling, query optimization. And so everything you need to pass the data engineering SQL interview, which you will probably do really well as a software engineer. So click the one in the description. It's entirely free. And let's go back to the video. Point number 3, the 20% gap that you have from going from a software engineer to a data engineer, you can probably learn that really, really fast. And I'm talking about in 1 to 2 months, maybe 3 months if you have other commitments. But the reason that you're able to learn that 20% isn't because it's super easy. It's because you already have the foundational skill sets to learn code really fast. You already have experience learning new code and knowing how to learn it. And so that skill set transfers very, very nicely when learning something as simple as SQL. So it's 2-3 months of focused work. It doesn't have to be years. You don't have to go get a master's. You don't have to get a college. You just have to be productive about how you're going about learning that new skill. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, what's that 20%? Well, I'll give you 4 things. Number 1, analytical SQL. So you probably know transactional SQL, right? Analytical SQL is things like window functions, CTEs, aggregations, optimized for reporting, dimensional modeling. This might take you like 2 weeks to learn. That's it. And this is the stuff that you're going to use to pull data, to aggregate data, and to do feature engineering. Number 2, ETL and ETL pipelines, right? So DBT for transformations, if you've heard of DBT, Spark for large scale processing, right? The concepts map directly into what you already know about data transformation, right? So same idea, different vocabulary, but the idea is very simple. It's okay, how do we take data and the raw data and turn it into usable data? And everything in between is just a pipeline. You've already been doing this as a software engineer, more or less, because you've been moving data around. Now we're just doing it in a very feature engineering-esque kind of way. Number 3, data warehouses, specifically cloud data warehouses. So we're talking about Snowflake, Redshift, BigQuery, different from transactional databases, which you've already dealt with, and how they actually store and query data. But again, this is very learnable in days, not months, days, because if you already worked with other databases, which of course you have as a software engineer, it's literally just learning how they differ, when to use which one, and boom, now you know how to use that kind of data warehouse versus a database that you're used to. And so literally this takes you a few days. It doesn't take you a few months. And if you find yourself thinking about this for more than a week, you've gone way too far. Number 4, Airflow for orchestration. So you understand CI/CD pipelines, right? Airflow is basically the CI/CD for data. So pipelines that are running on schedule with monitoring and alerting in place. And if you've already set up something like GitHub Actions, then you'll learn Airflow in a week. It's the same thing. It's the same concept. The reason we have to use Airflow is because now we're dealing with data and movement of data, but more or less it's the same concepts. It's just a different vocabulary. So let me show you exactly how this played out with one of our students, right? In the first kind of 1 to 3 weeks, let's say, this person had to learn analytical SQL and Snowflake, right? So new programming language, new data warehouse. And he built a personal project where he was pulling stock market data into Snowflake. And then he started writing window functions from there in order to analyze the data, right? And so the following weeks after that, he used something like DBT, right? Transformations, Airflow orchestrations, and he layered it on top of the same project, right? So by the time that week 7 rolled around, right? So less than 2 months time, now he was ready to put it on his resume. He was able to use the new data engineering vocab, which he had been able to think about it in terms of his software engineering experience. And now he was able to talk about it during the interview as well, because he did interview prep to make sure that what he was saying made sense and make sure that he basically was role playing what he was going to say on the interview, right? Which takes about a week or 2 worth of effort as well. And so by week 8, week 9, he started to apply to jobs, or we started to apply for him, I should say. And then he got an offer for $280,000 at a company where they specifically wanted somebody with a back-end infrastructure background. And so his software engineering was perfect. But this journey, as you can see, going from a software engineer to a data engineer, it didn't have to take a year. It took literally 9 weeks time. And the concepts that he was learning was not that hard. It was just that he had a very focused and structured plan instead of trying to do everything on Claude or ChatGPT or Reddit or Stack Overflow. As soon as he got a plan, as soon as he got clarity as to what he needed to do, he could do it in about 10 weeks time, and went from making, I think, about 150 grand to almost 300 grand. So almost double the compensation. And so the main lesson here is that if you set yourself and give yourself a 90-day plan and then just work backwards from there, you'll find yourself way more efficient. So again, week 1, SQL and data warehouse. Week 3, end-to-end project that you could put on your resume. Week 5, orchestration tools and the polishing of the project so that you understand everything from end to end, right? Week 7, week 8, you start putting on your resume and start preparing. And then week 9, week 10, you go through the interviews, apply, and then boom, you can get your offer as quickly as 90 days. Not every time, but again, if you're a software engineer, you have a very, very good chance of making that happen. Point number 4, there is a resume format that makes you absolutely unresistible to hiring managers when they see your resume. And so you don't need to learn a new experience, but what you need to do is you have to translate the experience that you already have. This is super important. You have the ability to leverage 5, 10, 20 years of experience, so you absolutely should. And all you have to do is change the language that speaks in terms of data engineering competence instead of just software engineering competence. And so again, same work, described differently, and then boom, it reads as a completely different candidate. So here's the translation guide. I'm gonna read it out to you. So built REST APIs that process user events become designed scalable data ingestion systems, processing millions of daily events. Again, something you've probably already worked on, but now you have to think about it from a data engineering perspective. Now, another one is optimized database queries become improved analytical query performance and reduce pipeline latency. At the end of the day, what you're doing there is you're making a database more efficient. You're saving the company money by making it more efficient. And now you're just talking about it in terms of a data engineer instead of just solely a software engineer. Another one, deployed containerized services with Kubernetes becomes orchestrated data processing workloads across distributed infrastructure. And so if you're thinking, what in the world is that? Well, if you're a software engineer, you know absolutely what containerized services mean. And then in the data engineering world, it's literally just building distributed infrastructure, right? How do we process data in multiple places at the same time to actually make it feasible and possible? Same concept. Another one, set up CI/CD pipelines become build automated pipeline deployment and monitoring systems. So again, the way that data moves in the data world is through something called ETL pipelines. You move the data from point A to point B, you transform the data in between, and that is the equivalent of a CI/CD pipeline in the software engineering world. Now, let me be clear, none of this is to be dishonest, right? It's the same work, you're just describing it through a different lens of the role that you're moving into. And so to a hiring manager that's screening these resumes for data engineering candidates, those phrases are the signals that they're looking for. And so as long as you know the concepts and can perform them on the job, which again, you already can because you've done it as a software engineer. And of course, if you upskill that last 20%, you absolutely will feel confident doing it. It's not being dishonest. You're just talking the language of the people that you're going for. And so I'll give you a real example of one of our students. He used this resume framework. And when we changed the language in his resume, we 3x his conversion rate for the actual applications that he was submitting. So one example that he did was he said, instead of saying maintain automated test infrastructure for API endpoints, instead he said build data validation frameworks, ensuring pipeline data quality across 50 million daily records, right? So same concept, one is maintaining, one is keeping data quality in check. Either way, you're building systems to make sure that the thing you built works and continues to work and alerts you whether it doesn't work. And so it's the same concept. It's just that the second one now speaks in terms of the data world. Number two, he changed built event logging microservices to design streaming data ingestion architecture for real-time analytics, right? So at the end of the day, what data engineers are really good at is working with real-time services. But the thing is, software engineers have been doing it for a while too. So if you can show that you're able to do real-time services, then boom, you stand out as a valuable engineering candidate. Now, we saw, I think about 100 companies pass on his resume. And then the moment that we updated his LinkedIn and changed his resume, we saw him get about 10 interviews instead of just one, because of these changes and because of the fact that AI is looping through his resume, looking for keywords. And when the hiring managers see the signals, they will give them a chance to move them on to the next interview. Same experience, completely different signal. So here's the lesson. Take your resume, look at 3 different bullet points, and do this exercise where you're taking a piece on your resume and transforming it into the data engineering side. Point number 5, why is the jump from a software engineer to a data engineer so big? This is the point that I need you to get across, right? So the difference between, $100,000 to $150,000 salary difference per year from a software engineer to a data engineer at the same experience, this is not an anomaly, right? This means that we have seen this happen time and time and time again. So the question is, why? And the answer is very simple. It's just demand, supply and demand. Meaning right now, the world needs a lot of data engineers. There's not a lot of people that could do it. And so if you're able to land that role, you'll get paid more. But right now, because there's so many software engineers, you're probably stuck between 100, 150, 200, 250. And then you'll be surprised to learn that you can go and make a lot more just by going up and over into a data engineering position. And fundamentally, if you think about why this is, we just have to think about the last 10 years. Software engineering has gotten more competitive every single year. More boot camp graduates, more college graduates, more offshore team, more commoditized services, frameworks, all this downward pressure that moves salaries to the south, right? And senior software engineers and most non-FANG companies cap out between 150 to 250 grand. And if you want more than that, then you have to move into management, which most engineers don't really want to do. They're happy coding. They don't want to be the managerial type. So data engineering is structurally different because of the AI and data boom that has happened in the last 5 years, where there's 5 job openings for every qualified candidate, right? And so according to page 19 of the World Economic Forum, right, data engineering is one of the fastest growing roles in the world, not just in the tech world, but in the world right now. In fact, in the next 5 years, 3 out of the top 5 jobs are expected to be in tech. Data engineering, big data, AI engineering, software engineering. I mean, all 5 jobs are in tech, but 4 out of the 5 are literally in data itself. So companies can't find enough people who have the combined engineering rigor with data systems knowledge. And so they're offering signing bonus, equity, remote bonuses, salaries that are consistently beating those of a software engineer making 100, 150, 200 grand per year. And so this is your time to make that jump. And data engineers who come from a software engineering background, they can command premium because they are what I call a triple threat. They could be a data engineer, a software engineer, and if you learn AI, even better, you can have those 3 skill sets, which make you an absolute lethal weapon in today's market. And I'll tell you the biggest thing I see at Data Engineer Academy, we've seen many software engineers go over to data engineer positions, one from making 160 to 300 grand, one from making 175 to 350, one from making 180 to 250, right? Modest jumps, huge jumps, everything in between. But I'll tell you the thing that just stands out the most, it's that the skill set that they have by the end of working with us, it's almost not that dramatically different than what they had at the beginning. It's just that they didn't know the 20 or 30% of really important things that they were missing. They didn't know how to communicate their resume better, and they didn't know how to actually interview with regards to these 2 new skill sets that they have gained. But again, that whole process takes like 9 weeks. And if you're able to do that, boom, you're able to command a much higher salary. And so real quick, let's make these numbers concrete because I really want to drive this home. And again, you can look at levels.fyi if you wanted to learn more information about compensation salaries in the tech world and see real up-to-date data on those compensations. But the average software engineer at a mid-level company makes about 150 to 200 grand, and career ceiling at most companies is about 220 grand, right? But the average data engineer will make anywhere between 220 to 300 grand for the same years of experience. So senior data engineers and data engineer platforms, or data platform engineers, I should say, they make even more, like between 280 to 380 grand per year, right? And so we have a guy named Alex who was making somewhere between 160, 170 as a backend engineer. He wanted to make 280 grand as a data engineer in just 90 days. Same years of experience, same technical depth, but boom, he was able to make a really quick jump. Of course, kudos to him. He focused, he put in the work, but he was able to leverage all the experience that he already had. And what's crazy about that, that's 120 grand more per year, which means over the next 4 years, he just made $500,000 extra, right? From a measly investment with Data Engineer Academy, boom, he made an extra $500,000 in his career. Now, here's the big lesson that I really want you to take away from this, is that this window where software engineers have a very big structural advantage in data engineering, I don't think it's gonna last forever. The reason I say this is because the world has now caught on that AI and data engineering is super important. And so you'll start seeing more curriculums like this in school, in colleges, companies teaching this to their employees. And so that window is going to get smaller and smaller over the next 2, 3, 4 years. And so the engineers who move now in 2026 are the ones who will be the senior and lead data engineers when the market normalizes in 2, 3, 4 years. And so you should start your 90-day plan now, not in 6 months, but now, because there's only disadvantages to waiting. There's zero advantages to waiting. And so if that framework helps you, then hopefully this video was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed the video. But before you go, remember, we have a free SQL training module for software engineers in the first link in the description. You'll learn window functions, CTEs, dimensional modeling, the exact SQL skills that show up in every data engineering interview, all in one place. It's completely for free. All you got to do is click on the first link, grab it below. And if you like this video, please like, share, comment, subscribe so that we can keep making videos like this for you, and so that we can understand what it is that you're looking for, and we can just keep pumping out free content just for you. Now that you know exactly why your software engineering background is actually the advantage and not the obstacle, the next video is we go deep into the execution. And so the specific projects to build, the specific resume language that gets responses, and the technical interviews that you face. So I'm going to show you even exactly how you should pass those, and that's where the 90 days can actually start. So click right here, and I'll see you there in this next video. Cheers.